I need my mood lighting. All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Brian Holcomb. I'm the curator at the Moss Arts Center, and I'm happy to welcome Rodrigo Valenzuela, who's one of the 3 photographers in our current exhibition titled Messengers. And this exhibition is organized around 3 artists who come to photography through adjacent means. It's hard to pin them or label them as just a photographer. But some of the things that they share in common is, as you look at the shows, that they primarily work in the studio, like studio photography. So there's a flatness and compressed space to these images, but also they deal a lot with the archive and how they find their source imageries through familial, cultural, political sources. So, and we'll see through the talk some of the source imagery that Rodrigo used to kind of create some of his series. So the 3 artists in the show, Leslie Hewitt, who we see, this is her riffs on real time with ground. And she is layering her photographs of family archive with other materials that kind of place the perspective in time, but you can see that there's a weight relationship with the floor and sculpture with the work. Tarrah Krajnak, this is her excavation or automatic rocks excavation series, to where she is using performance, using the rock as like a talisman, a portal, to create these poems that you see on the right. So not only are you looking at the photograph, you're reading the photograph. And Rodrigo Valenzuela, who is sitting to my left, and this is we were showing his latest series, the Garabatos series, and we'll get into that shortly. So Rodrigo Valenzuela lives and works in Los Angeles, California, where he's the associate professor and head of the photography department at UCLA. He's recently been awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship in Photography, a Smithsonian Artist Research Fellowship. He's also received the Joan Mitchell Award for Painting and Sculpture, an Art Matters grant, and Art Trust Innovators Award. His recent solo exhibitions have been at the New Museum in New York, Kendallhofer Gallery in Vienna, the Jordan Snitzer Museum in Eugene, Oregon, the Orange County Museum of Art, the Portland Art Museum, and the Frye Art Museum in Seattle. And Rodrigo also participates in a lot of residencies as well. The Core Fellowship at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, the McDowell Colony, the Bemis Center of Contemporary Arts, Lightwork, and the Center of Photography at Woodstock. So please join me in welcoming Rodrigo. So I just wanted to start off with, since you work in film, photography, like sculpture, and you also have a degree in philosophy. It's like, how did you decide on photography or become a photographer?
I thank you for coming, and thank you for having me, everybody here, and Laura for the work, Brian, and everybody for just coming yesterday. It was very nice to meet a lot of you guys. I wanted to be a filmmaker, so it was, it's hard to work in film when you mostly want to work alone. So photo was like the second best option, and you need a lot less talent than painting, But the thing is, I really love making sculptures, but also not a good sculptor. So the photos are this really nice kind of solution to figure out the potential for these sculptures or the objects or moments to be something else beyond the thing that you were making, and then kind of give them a new life and and more options of being, right? I think there is something about also the way I work kind of contradict or fight against this idea of the decisive moment in photography, the kind of like capturing good moments and I think making stuff. You know, like for example, when I was younger and in undergrad and in school, I used to do a lot of this kind of performance. You know, this works very old, like probably 15 years older, more. But yeah, I always thought about this photography as not like a talent device, right? As I didn't want to capture something particular. I wanted to make it feel that it may always be there, but always maybe changing, right? So there is something on.
So the landscape seems to play a lot in like your earlier work. I mean, just as we just saw that you were building things outside, taking photos outside, but you also incorporate like the landscape in your painting. What was like a turning point for you to like decide to like go to the studio to take that source and start to construct your images or take them further?
If you leave it in this work, right? And the main reason is because shame and pride, I guess, is like I didn't want to see myself as a like landscape photographer, right? I mean, it seems like, and again, you know, I would like to say out loud like, oh, nothing wrong with landscape photography, but it is, you know. It's like, but this is the thing, it's not that it's wrong, or like, you know, it's not in the same level than taking pictures of homeless people, right? It's like, sure, it's dramatic and it's easy, but you also, there is no morality in it, right? It's just like really bad behavior, taking pictures of homeless people, right? But landscape is a different kind of bad behavior, not as bad, but it is kind of like free beauty, right? It's just like, here, like, what is interesting about it, it's like, I mean, I live in California, right? So sometimes I take my dog to a walk in the Santa Monica, and if you go in the sunset, it's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people taking pictures of sunsets, right? And everybody thinks he's a good photographer at the same time, right? That the photo was beautiful, they will email it to people, they will send it to people, they will show it to you, telling you, look how great it was. And 100% of the sunsets are amazing. Like there is very few ugly sunsets in the history of humanity, right? So when you take pictures of nature, I mean, this being kind of like, there is a lot of layers. First, I feel viewed it's like a cheap trick. But second, it is, nature is also a political tool, right? I mean, there is a reason why national parks have trails and, you know, viewpoints, and there is times where the government tells you, look here, right? There is no easier way to build national identity without the, you know, landscapes, right? Like landscape painting is a very good way to, yeah, to kind of build that ideology in the viewer's mind. And people in painting have done it forever with this idea of manifest destiny, right? Depictions of the West as a way of telling you that it's their God right to just, you know, conquer the West and take land from other people, right? So I think landscaping is not innocent, right? And taking pictures of landscapes is also claiming it, right? It's ownership. And I think it's very particular. One of the reasons why, can you come back to the other image, right? So I did a lot of photos of landscapes, right? But this is, I have them. I love going to the landscapes. I love taking hikes. I have a national park pass. I do a lot of stuff in nature. But also it's like, how do I understand this landscape, right? If I told you already that it's a political tool, what is my role in that political tool? And to me, it was I'm very linked to manifest destiny, right? When as an immigrant, when I think about coming to America, right? For Like everybody in Chile, there's like, I don't know, 1,000 people right now thinking I should immigrate to USA. There is like another 2,000 people in Argentina thinking I should immigrate to USA. There is like, you know, like 50 million in Mexico thinking I should immigrate to USA, right? And the same for every country, everybody would like to come to USA, right? But which one, right? When I moved to USA, I moved to Boston first. And then from Boston, I moved to Seattle. And then from Seattle, I live in Houston. And now I live in LA. Those are like 4 different USAs, right? So when you think about America, what are you thinking, right? I mean, it's something I ask my students a lot of the time. For you guys who are young students, I see, you know, it's a state school, so I assume that some of them have like, there is very different economic backgrounds, and you know, some of your parents are military, some of your parents are engineers, some of you guys are like local farmers, very, very probably radical different economic upbringings, right? There's also going to be very different upbringing when you think about like, for you, it's like mostly race and background, right? And now you're studying art. It's like you have to question, do you make American art? Right? I think it's a very fair question to any artist. It's like, do I consider myself an American artist? Right? Like Norman Rockwell, or, you know, so like, what you think about American art, what are you thinking? You know, who make it? No, I make a different kind of work. You know, so it's interesting because I've been educated in USA. I went to 2 undergrads and grad school here. So all my consciousness of how to be a professional artist is under the American parameters. But then the museum will come and buy my work as a part of the Latin American collection because where I was born, right? But again, the thing with the landscape is that I get drilled really easy. So I start making these landscapes, you know, this place that first the landscape, the empty desert is kind of this idea too. It's like, it's a metaphor for what you consider America, right? It's just like, it's just empty in your head. You don't really know how it looks like. You just want to be there, right? So again, it can be Boston, Seattle, you know, New York or Texas or California. But the only thing I know for sure is that this landscape, in my mind, have to be built out of endless bureaucracy, right? To become an immigrant, to become a resident, to become a citizen, is just paperwork after paperwork after paperwork. So the only way I could use this landscape is by making it with Xerox, right? Which is the material of bureaucracy. So the only way I can work in the studio is by assigning some sort of cultural value to the materials I use, and then I can riff of them. Right? Then I allow myself a lot of creativity and fuck around with them because now I know that they mean this is how you make home through paperwork. Bureaucracy is what keeps people poor, what keep the immigrant out. And I thought that is how I started building these things.
So continuing on that, it's like you, from the perspective coming from Chile to the US, another one of your series, get to it, is kind of dealing with the idea of ruins and the perspective, like an American's perspective of ruins versus immigrant perspective of ruins.
Yeah, I got super lucky because as soon as I finished grad school, I got this solo show in this museum in Seattle. So, you know, in some way, you know, you can work really hard, you can be very smart, but if those opportunities doesn't come, it's like, you know, there is a level of lack in all that you do. So I was lucky that the curator cared about me, liked my work, was able to have the time to listen to me, you know, and then she gave me this amazing opportunity of the show at the Friar Museum. And again, it's also like reaction or rejection to photography. At the time, there was very popular for photographers to do ruin porn, right? Going to Detroit or Pittsburgh or like an abandoned towns. Probably here there is a lot of coal mine towns that like people will go and take some cute, beautiful, romantic pictures, right? And then, and again, if you go to one of those empty factories or empty town or ghost towns at sunset, an abandoned building, sad town, beautiful lighting, fuck, such a good art, amazing, right? You're so talented, like you're so talented. So I was like, but you know, how you take care of, how you really, that is a one photo, that is not an art project, right? That is not like what art production should, you know, illuminate, right? It's like how to make, if you can leave it there, is, please, so, how you take pictures of some place like that without taking advantage of how that picture can be in charge of not reminding people that that used to be a place where people used to work, live, have education, health, right? So it's very fascinating when people take these amazing romantic pictures. Again, you're taking advantage of the decay of a society that doesn't have like, you know, in some way the impulse to like learn from the past, right? I mean, it's just so complicated for American society to really accept the past, learn from it, right? I mean, a lot of these places get abandoned because you gotta move on, right? They're pulling you back from your progress, you know, the thing that you are supposed to be destined to. But you know, if you go to Lima, Peru, you go to Mexico, you go to Guatemala, you go to Italy, there is ruins downtown, right? They live with the past, they commute with what they can learn from, you know. And again, yeah, maybe they are not very, you know, powerhouse economies, but there is something about identity that is super strong in their cases. They build that in a very resilient way. So, yeah, I think it's like, what do we use as a source of knowledge is very important to me. How architecture is very important because we inhabit it with our bodies and they're coded with kind of like what we need as a society in certain moments, right? But also has all the ills of this thing, right? I mean, you know, so I basically started making these photos that they were but again, the job of an artist is not to find then the opposite of the ruins that I hate, right? Or I wouldn't go, again, if I go to, if I don't want to go and take pictures of Pittsburgh or Detroit or some abandoned town, ghost town here, or go to the Sierras in California, you know, there is tons of places. Where there used to be something and now not longer, they've been abandoned and, you know, they're decaying slowly. If I don't want to be the kind of guy that take advantage of communities like that, it's also not that smart or interesting going to the ruins, you know, take a picture of going to Rome and take pictures of the ruins, or going to Lima and take pictures of the ruins, right? That is kind of like parasiting history too. To me, most important was like, why are we interested in those kind of pain, right? The job of the artist is really as like, if I go to Detroit and Pittsburgh and I say, oh fuck, I love it. Why do I love it, right? And I think there is where it's a source of new body works and new understanding of like, so I made this body of work called hedonic reversal, right? It's like, I was thinking, okay, what I can make in the studio that is a minimum gesture to call something a ruin without taking advantage of a community, right? Or kind of what it reminds you of something that could be called a ruin, right? So really thinking about like, in some way economically, what is the minimum thing that awakens that big feeling inside you? And hedonic reversal, the name is because that is kind of like, that is the feeling that we pursue, right? Anything that makes you feel pain, that reminds you that you're human, is hedonic reversal, right? Like watching a sad movie. Like it's crazy that sometimes you want to watch a sad movie, right? Like because a good cry would make you feel a little alive, right? Or you wanna go and order like 5-star spicy stuff because burning your mouth gonna feel good, right? It's like all these weird things that we do to just to feel a little bit alive is the thing that I feel we pursue when we search for places of pain, right? And that is kind of what the work was about.
And you mentioned like learning from history, and you also kind of tackle like memory, how it's different, or how our being American or being immigrant, how we remember history is different. And you were mentioning experiencing or visiting VCU and seeing the monuments, and how you're taking like the context of it, of what the message was or what the protest was, and then how you were more interested in like the roadside memorial.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Virginia. I spent a lot of time in Richmond when I was younger, and if you leave it there, that is because learning history, right? Is because I don't have a dog in that fight, right? Like this is the thing. Sometimes with American culture, it's very complicated because it feels like artists or people that are involved in political concern, they become like a jeep or like a 4x4 all-terrain car that you think you can tackle any fucking problem that happen in society, and then you just start talking about random shit, right? So it's very complicated. Like I do not care about like Confederate monuments at all. Like I just have them. You know what I mean? Like I said, like it's just silly, but it's not sillier than in Chile that we have every train station named after a colonizer. You know what I mean? So, there is like, we could learn from other places, like I'm pretty sure Germany doesn't have a Hitler monument, but, maybe they learned something, maybe they're really, really sorry, but I don't know, like, whatever is the thing that leads you to be the best you. If that is having them around, is good, whatever it is, right? It's very fascinating because in some way I like learning about it, and then the more you learn about it, you also figure out that kind of it's not, you don't quite understand it, so might as well not talk about it, right? And the same than Palestine, Israel, like it's just so complicated that you can just educate yourself and then shut the fuck up, right? Like that is the best thing, the healthiest thing you can do. Talk to everybody, figure out how you feel about it, how people that really been there feels about it, But again, similar to the question of ruins, right? Because I want to understand, and my job as an artist is like, it's like if I go and I make a graffiti on the monument, I put myself into all the scenarios, and I look at what other artists make. And if I go and graffiti the face of the thing, it feels like a very rupturist gesture, very public, but it's not art, right? I can write a bunch of stuff. I can paint it funny. I can put clown clothing to this, like generally, and it's still not art. It's funny. It's still not art, right? I can wrap it in my colonial fabrics, and it's still not art. Right? It's interesting. It's kind of like a eye-catching thing if you see it from the street. And again, there's like, I can name like 5 or 6 or 7 artists that are making that kind of shit. Put your fabrics from wherever you come from, and like cover those, Confederate monuments, and people think it's art. It's just not. It's just not interesting, or maybe genetic art, right? Again, but you also should not do nothing. You know what I mean? It's like you can't be like too high that like it's like you're above doing any gesture, right? So the question to me is always like, because part of the liberal mindset, I mean, we live in a bipartisan society, right, where like you're supposed to be the opposition all the time. And, you know, artists have this weird thing where the opposition. So very few times, because the opposition, you're like, oh, okay, I hate that. You know? But like very few times people get to ask you, but what do you love? What would you like to have in a state? Let's say that they do us a huge favor and they take all the monuments down. But we have the platform, right? Who you want to put there? I'm pretty sure we can go 30 years discussing who should go up there. And we're not going to get anybody up there, right? So you can fight, protest about taking somebody down, but you truly have no idea who you would like to put up there, right? I said as a joke, but my idea could be putting 20 people around the monument, 20 other monuments around the monument. So you don't see that monument, so you don't take it down. But because also it's a silly thing, it's like I don't want to talk about those guys. Like I don't want them to be in my consciousness. So to me, it could be like, let's stop talking about this guy, let's just surround the bad guys with, you know, like what we do, you know? We outnumber assholes. Like in a party, there's a guy that you don't want, that guy ends up in the corner, you hang out with your friends. That is like how we deal with society, right? We don't destroy them, you know, we don't kill them, we like, you don't like kick them out because they are like, they have weird fucking ideas, right? It's like, okay, we want to hang out with my friends, we want to be cool here in the corner. So to me, it was like, what is the thing I would like to see? What is the thing I understand as monument? Also, when I understand monument, when I talk to myself about monument, do I say monument? What is the difference between monument and monumentality, right? It's just anything big is a monument, right? Can I just like, are those like car cells, balloon things, you know? Those are monumental size things, but they're not a monument, right? So I have to start questioning what things are monuments, what things require monumentality in society, right? So I start searching, Googling, mixing around, and then I have to think about like with my knowledge, my experience, right? I think about these animitas, right? These roadside altars. They're made for unknown people that die, that they're a gesture of love. They're a gesture for your mom makes you this thing. And I feel like that is a true monument, right? So I feel like they should be more of those things, you know? So basically I make this piece that has like all the kind of qualities of a monument as we see it, because eventually monuments as we see it for big, important figures, they have a aesthetic, they have a materiality, right? So I start making this kind of like roadside altars with the scale of a roadside altar, but with the textures and the materials of a monument. And that is to me kind of the best outcome, right? It's like I just want to like elevate the things I love to the same playing field than the things that I hate, just to maybe create some balance, you know, not really to like erase the other things. And that is, I feel like America have done with a lot of history. It's kind of like try so hard to forget, instead of like kind of really like find the balance between the things. The times that you fail with the things that you win, right? It is, it's very, very important to kind of like, to me, find that kind of stylistic. And then I start making photos with this sculpture that I make, and now it's like, I just ran through like all the possibilities of this kind of like cubicle or this like modular shape to become photos. Kind of like an IKEA setup for this monument. And that was the project. You know, a side note, I talked to somebody about it. It's like, because I made that project in Houston, well, you know, I moved from Seattle to Houston, so also I was shocked by the monuments, right? And I was like, what the fuck? And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a work about it. And then I was like, okay, but I ran through all these ideas I just told you, right? And I thought it could be a hit, you know? But like, nobody wanna talk about it in Houston. Like they was like, what? No, wait, no. Like, so, you know, nobody bought any of the prints. Like people were like, love it. Shh, don't tell anybody. And then but I was so sure the work was good, I brought it to LA. And then, again, was like, then people actually love it. Like, wrote in the LA Times, in our forum, like, because there was like, you know, there's a safe critique from the West Coast, right? LA doesn't have this Confederate monument, and they're super liberal, so they will write very openly about like how wrong they are, right? And how good is the idea. But still nobody bought it because nobody wants to have like this sad shit on their couch, right? So it's like second show I have it, and it's just like still not making money. And it's not a translation of like that how good is gonna be the money, but I'm a full-time artist, I gotta pay the bills, right? So I still believe in the project, and then I brought it to Vienna, you know, and they know they fucked up. So like, so they love it. And that was cool.
So, I mean, there's obviously like a lot of labor in your work.
Yeah.
And the visibility of labor, or is kind of can you talk about how like the disappearance or the visibility of labor plays in your work?
I mean, this project is, I have done it a lot. I mean, I have thought a lot about disappearance of labor, mostly because my personal experience, right? When I moved to Montreal, I worked in cleaning offices in the middle of the night. So I was very, very aware that, you know, like the only time the work is well done is when nobody notices it, right? And I thought that there is, and that was kind of the foundation also for some of the videos for the Fry Show, where I was following the cleaning crew at Rice University after the football stadiums. You know, that is interesting because, well, we're customers, but whatever. I mean, this is a football town, right? And it's in Houston, and they have a big college football thing. And I love the, how to say it? I mean, they send them motel rooms or, you know, hotel rooms or these places that they're kind of they're public, but really close to intimate desires, right? You want your team to win, and you will like, don't care how, right? And like it's a public place, but it's a place for passion, right? Where you scream, you take your shirt off, you like, you know, you behave in the way that you wouldn't behave in your living room, and it's very fascinating what happened with it. They send in a motel room, like you do nasty things there, like you wouldn't do it somewhere, but there is a soul, and you don't really consider that, like, you know, you celebrate and throw the popcorns away and the hot dogs and the drink if your team loses, and it's like somebody will clean it, right? There is like a crew, there is like a whole system that allows you to, because if you show up like that from the beginning of the game, depending on how the previous game left the stadium, right? It could be like disgusting, right? Like then you could be really aware of like, oh shit, my team lost. It's like looking around, like seeing all the food left over, like all the drinks in the ground, right? But then you have this machinery that like people just come as soon you leave, as soon you express all your passion, and then they clean the stadium. And then so everything is new again for you to like come out again next Sunday and be the most close you can be. And the same with hotel rooms and a lot of serious places like that. So I was thinking a lot of it, this, like, yeah, the invisibility of labor linked with like how much is like the reward system and how much is the consciousness of like somebody else is doing it or you participating in a society. But with this particular work, I was thinking a lot about the disappearance of labor unions because of this collectivity, right? I mean, I think it's, and I made this book recently called new words for post-worker work. So it's funny because this body of work, I made it in 2015, I think, 16. And this is, I made it last month. I came out in Milan last month, or last week actually, but it was published last month. And so I've been thinking about collectivity and labor unions a lot. The main, I mean, again, since 2016, I've been thinking that the disappearance of labor union is not only this kind of like nostalgic vision of America or what built the middle class. It's really, my fear is that without this sense of belonging to what is the way that we put food in our mouth, the way that we pay for stuff, you know, we are doomed to become, you know, producers and consumers, and that's it. Right? Mostly after COVID, where you stay home and you think it's cool not to have a job and not to go to the office. And sure, commuting is not fun, but also that is the kind of mentality that brings people like Trump to, like if anybody that is liberal that was surprised that Trump got elected is like delusional, right? It's like if you stay in a bubble where like everybody in your neighborhood have you kind of same amount of money and like, you know, your same living situations and like similar stuff, you never get to interact across society, right? So if you don't leave the house, you never see the cleaning lady, you never see your boss, you never see the bus driver, you never see a bunch of people that like actually inform you how you see the world, right? And if you don't agree, you know, then try to agree with your coworkers on how to get paid, how it become all this private bargaining, where you can be so dependent of like, well, you know, yeah, I don't need to fight too much for my income because when my grandpa die, I'm gonna get so much money, you know, or my parents gonna leave me their house, or, you know, or I inherit these things. So you like kind of like are really connected to like kind of like this lack of how you were born, and then there is no this like collective desire to when we do something, we all kind of like move society forward, right? So the disappearance, I mean, that's the reason why, in some way, I find all these logos of labor unions and I erase them, the letters, the numbers. And once you erase the letters and the numbers of a labor union logo, they start becoming something that resemble either sport teams logos or military symbols, which is that the only two kind of like sectors where people can get behind as a collective identity, right? And you know, whatever you think about the cops, military, or whatever it is, but it is like the last places where people really consider, oh, we all do this, we're a brotherhood or sisterhood, right? It's the very few places where, oh, sport teams, right? Whatever team you follow here is the only time that we all agree on that one thing. And that's it, right? It's like, it's very, and it's so silly. None of those things have nothing to do with your life or how your kid's gonna live or how your friend's gonna live. And you decided that those two very really relatively far away from your body situations will be the thing that you connect over. And it's just very crazy to me.
So in your series Barricades, you started to like look at the objects and everything, or also just the forms of protest, and how that was something that you were observing here, a difference in the U.S. And you were using like source imagery of different protests, looking at the materials. Like, how did the materials like help you define like a vocabulary for protests for this next series?
I mean, very literally, the word barricades come from the first time that somebody used barricades was during the religious wars in France in like 1500. I think it's 1540 or something like that. And they were using barrels to block the roads, right? And barrels was like, it was the, now we do it for alcohol and drinks, right? But it used to be the only way to transport goods in a boat, right? Because you load it with beans or liquids or oil or whatever is the thing that you were transporting across the canal or the ocean, and then you can roll them into the boat, right? So the whole boat was only barrels, right? And now, most of the time, you will encounter in barricades like pallets, right? Pallets is so in some way like the necessity of protest and using the byproduct of capitalism has been there for like 500 years, right? So it's very, just that coincidence is kind of fascinating. But to me also is the language of protest, right? Again, in USA, there is something about that. I mean, you saw it more clearly with Black Lives Matters, where finally there was a language of protest that felt organized, also more methodic and more necessary. But in general, people don't really protest here, which is like, I go back and forth. Theoretically, I would love people protesting more, but personally, I love that it's not like Chile, because in Chile it's like every fucking day something, and it's like sometimes you just gotta get to work, and sometimes you just didn't have the right clothing to run from the cops, and so I love that people protest so much in Chile, Mexico, Latin America, that people want to fight for their rights, but also there is something beautiful here that people really believe in society, and in the most cases works, right? But there is a very lack of vocabulary when it comes to protesting here, right? I mean, the fact that, I don't know, it's complicated. I don't want to talk too much shit about it, but I mean, it's just like the amount of, it's not shit, it's like the amount of it's how easy for people is to post resources to things, to whatever happened. People solely is within a minute of some tragic thing happening, can be a war, can be like a fire or like a hurricane, within a minute there is resources you can post, and other times how the fuck you know where the money goes from? Also, why you throw money? Why is your only solution to things is just to throw money at some problem and release yourself from understanding anything? And it's just so incredibly annoying that do you want to, I mean, I don't donate any of these things. You want to donate a print to Ukraine, Palestine, and, because I grew up during dictatorship, and Chile has had two of the biggest earthquakes. We have tragedy after tragedy, and I have known that there is global request for money for. I never saw any of that money. As any Ukrainian, if saw any of your bullshit $20 that you donate, they didn't see any of that money. But CEOs of Red Cross or they are making $60 million a year or something like that, right? So you basically are fundraising for these CEOs. It's ridiculous. That you would think that. Basically, the only thing you're doing is releasing yourself from responsibility to understanding something deeply, right? So it's just so I think it's the protest, the mentality of how it affects it is a language, right? It's a language because if you feel you've been posting in the last couple of months about Ukraine, Palestine, whatever, but you haven't really posted or protest against, I mean, you guys are mostly college students, so try to organize a march to go protest for interest rate loans. They're really fucking you over for the rest of your life. So if you are not doing that thing, then don't do any of the other things, because you obviously don't care about how society will move, right? So just if you don't want more scholarship, it's not if all your peers don't have a free bus pass to get to a school at least for free to ensure that you get here. It is all your things are relatively innocent then, right? So that is the thing that sometimes I tell you, it's the matters of language. It's you don't have priorities, how your life will go, how long lasting this energy will last. It is kind of it's telling, right? So basically with the protest, with the barricades, I was thinking about I need to think about every material as almost as a vocabulary, right? As an alphabetization of what we use to protest. And I just want to set these pictures as learn A, B, C, learn the fucking language of protest. I will put it in pictures. So that was the thing.
And you mentioned about wearing the right clothes and everything, and you bring the figure back into with this series based on the source imagery, and I'll switch to the image that came from this.
That's myself with mask. Yeah, that is something you learn very quickly when you're a kid in Chile or Latin America. It's how you help yourself when the whole street smells like tear gas. Just grab a can of Coke, put some cotton, get some lemon. Always walk around with lemon in your backpack, so you can put that. Help the pH of your saliva to so you don't tear up too much, right? So, yeah, a little layers for breathing and a little acid in your mouth will help you to at least be able to not cry and run at the same time.
So you incorporated this work in this show here with the barricades and then the uniforms.
That gallery, she was so great. Deb Claudeman in Culver City, California, she let me destroy her gallery over and over again, and she never asked me for repayment or fixing stuff. She was so supportive, and I was able to do crazy installations there because of that, and I really like the elasticity of my brain and my muscle, installation muscle, really grow with her, support. It's very cool.
Yeah. So in the interest of time, I kind of want to go forward to show the video of this type of your process and everything.
You guys just
So
go
I'm gonna-
fast.
Yeah.
I mean,
so this is where you kind of reintroduce the landscape and you engage with the
Oh, yeah,
collection at the
you know,
university.
Because I think about landscape as I told you, as a manifesting movement, right? As I think. So, can you go back one?
Sure thing.
So remember this curator asked me to take over the museum to have a show there. So what I did is basically I brought the walls of a past exhibition, and I put all these landscapes I made around the perimeter of and inside I concealed. You move. Inside, I concealed the permanent collection that has to do with sublime. I was like, how is that Europeans only can make sublime shit, right? It's like, how is it when they make a landscape is sublime, and what Latinos or Native Americans do, it's picturesque, right? It's like, what is this thing? And also it has to do with when you are artist of color. You gotta go to really fancy schools, get all the degrees you can, be in every major show, and then some museum will acquire your work, and then you go to their permanent collection, and they have a bunch of bullshit, and then you're like, how? How is are these guys are not amazing? How you get there? And it's just because some old couple die and then donate all their collection, and then that's how all these artists end up being institutionalized. And then you have to really be exceptional to get there, right? It's it's so ridiculous. So I don't. So I basically hide it. The only way you could see it is through the cracks of my work. So I didn't want to make amazing paintings. I just want to make them equally mediocre as the other ones that are inside, but at least mine's gonna be fierce, and that's it.
So I'm going to go through, you're going to see several series of Rodrigo's here that kind of shows him going back to the studio construction.
So that one and the previous one, so this is the last part of the work, but I've been making this trilogy about the CIA involvement with the culture, and the first one was American type painting. American type is, and this one is called Stature, which is a focus on Latin American modernism during dictatorship times. I made it as a photograph verse.
So you're exploring all the different ways of making photographs and transferring images, even in the paintings.
Oh,
And
that
then
is the same gallery. They just let me raise the floor 2 feet, and then I made some ceramics and I buried them in the floor. I mean, there's a hole you can see, but also because I'm not a sculptor, I wanted to set the viewer to only see the ceramics as kind of bird's eye view perspective, as if you were a surveillance camera, right? But also I put these photographers around, so you can hear your steps and you can see it. So there's again the same gallery, she's wonderful. I was doing the residency at the Smithsonian, looking at all the archives of Again, the third part was looking at modernism as an American industrialization as an excuse to also think about the early labor union movement in USA and how much, the areas that really go by Trump create the middle class, the very party that wanna dismantle all safety nets and social networks and support, and it's the very thing that create the middle class. So it's how, the memory is very fragile in America in the way that, once you think that's it. If you ask for, probably the younger people are too young because probably your parents are my age, but my parents or people older, they really think that young people are lazy because they are don't want to go to college or whatever. But 30 years ago, college was like $5,000. It's just, So sure, you could have a part-time job and pay for everything and and get your own car. But literally now, if your parents don't give you your own car to go to your first job, you just gotta take the bus and you're gonna be late everywhere because public transportation is designed to punish the poor people, right? So it's just so endemic. So I think those are the aftermath of not modernist and this construction of the middle class that have a very fragile memory.
So we can show this video now of kind of like a little short studio visit, 2-minute process to just show you the type of labor that goes into each of these tableaus that Rodrigo created and continues with the series that we have upstairs.
On the stage. This is a new project I'm working right now. And it's still in production. This is the second phase where I already have built some backdrops and I'm taking the final shots. Later I will go to the darkroom and develop these images that they are based on archival images from the early labor unions. And the way that we work on them is building the sets. Here you can see the scale, and then we appropriate and build a bunch of objects that resemble machine or like machinery, and also objects that have alien qualities, and that we create this environment of like the city and the factories have been abandoned and these machines are taking over. So this is a final image that you can see of how the work gonna look like after it's developed. It's in a similar way I work during my last show.
Also sci-fi, again, is some similar thought I was giving you earlier from other body work. Now I feel like with this kind of I don't want to call it post-capitalist because I truly think it's there is no way around it, right? There is nothing that we can do about capitalism. And I also don't want to live in another system where there is not a lot of, but I would like to live in a kinder capitalism or less abusive capitalism, right? So it's just, again, I do need to have this competitiveness that capitalism offers. I just don't want the foundation or the baseline to be set so low and have so many people being kind of diminished by the way that they operate right now. So that is how I work. And then right now with science fiction, it's kind of it's the only place really that you can envision a world where capitalism is kinder or nicer or better. It is through science fiction, right? So that's why I went through sci-fi to talk about these issues. And that's how I made this, and I installed this body of work in this kind of bomb bed situation. There was this thing in, this is a Patricia Reddy gallery in Chile. There is this thing called camitas calientes in mining towns in Chile, called camitas hotbeds, which basically is because they have 2 very long shifts of work. So basically, when some worker could come from work, they just wake up the next one and then go to sleep. So you are always warm, sleeping in a warm bed, but just because of the turnaround of intense labor. So I just made this installation in like something that resembles some bomb beds or stuff like that, right? And all the screen prints are all these machines that I make, the weapons machines, they were screen printed on top of time cards, the things to check into work.
So this brings us to like the series that we're showing, the Garabatos, which kind of continues with your research of like subcultures, like language, and one of the things that just kind of like you to speak about is just the color in this work. It's almost like completely all white, except for the ones that are done in shadows, but and there's like this bone-like structures, but you can kind of look in the gestures and everything. Could you kind of talk about this, how you're developing this other, or still like trying to dissect this like vocabulary or creative vocabulary for these materials and these gestures?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I was thinking, I was talking yesterday to no, don't leave. Oh, okay, have a good class. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Okay, no one else. My ego cannot take it.
I think we have a gesture for that.
No, yeah, exactly. But the thing is, like, also, I was talking yesterday to a class about it. The gestures that we do, that they feel intimate, but also they're public, right? And then we do it for a necessity to communicate something that we have no words for it, right? So I think there is something interesting about kind of how they evidence class, region, and age is so. Yeah, it's so clear, so beautiful to me that like I feel like we should have like more books or museums exclusively dedicated to the things that we do with our bodies. That they are part of history, they're part of our cultural understanding of each other, right? So otherwise I've been building this body of work as a museum or as a natural history museum in some way because I think there is not enough places to for the understanding of the body and kind of our feelings. So I think it's very, very important. I was thinking about like how much it switches, right? From like, from this to, I would say like the whole thing of like, if you do this, it's very cool, but if you do it really close to your mouth, it becomes really grotesque, right? So it's like how you will transform the same gesture into different meanings. I think it's it's very powerful, but also it's like playful and also, yeah, I think it's, I just wanted to like, be the whole summer thinking about obscenities in my house.
Yeah, and I really liked how you were talking in the class yesterday and framed it as like a natural history display of how it's like something that everybody can kind of, if you visit a natural history museum, you can kind of understand what was going on.
Yeah, I think it's like, I think sometimes museums or places we consider things of places of knowledge, they are so focused on data and not enough in wisdom. And I feel like that is why we should operate society, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like really putting wisdom in the forefront. Mm-hmm. And not necessarily, I mean, wisdom will come with a lot of things, like being informed, a little bit of data, a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of fiction, mm-hmm. a lot of things in order to, discover the truth of things. But I think sometimes they're only focused on data. And I mean, and it's dangerous if the data doesn't have a spirit. It's mm-hmm. just very, very dangerous, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the thing that a lot of the governments do to keep people poor, right? Because, you have $2,000, I have $0. Like average income in this stage is $1,000, right? It's just like it's just not really, numbers are not enough, right? And or information is not enough. Data is not enough to understand people.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Rodrigo. I really appreciate it, and I just have to say, this is still just a sliver of Rodrigo's entire work of films, but you can go to his website and see some of the films that he's made and everything where you'll introduced yourself to the telenovelas and all that stuff. Since we ran for a full hour, we just have time for like 1 or 2 questions, if there's a question from the audience for Rodrigo.
2 good ones.
Two good questions.
So just really think about it. Don't be shy.
Okay.
Okay, hi. So I just want to first off by saying thank you so much for an amazing like talk or like artist talk. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you.
I guess like my question is I was really intrigued or like really inspired by how you talked about like if you if you don't if you are putting or investing not your life but investing your time into something where you don't have a lot of knowledge or something like that. I guess when you make your works, do you kind of use this idea of looking at both both sides or both laterals to a particular topic and use that in your works in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the friction that happened with kind of keeping some sort of democratic voice in your head about how much weight ideas have is very important, right? Again, you may not hear it, you may make that kind of super partisan work of art, but you still should hear the other side, right? The other side of your head that tells you, make it, make it shiny, make it hot. But there's other parts like, no, make it skewers. People that get it. Fuck the other people, right? And you kind of find a balance, right? But I think when it comes to where that balance come from, right? Because also, I may have bad taste, and what I think is really sexy, it will be not still good enough for you, right? Not clean enough, not nice enough, right? You may be also very, very smart. So what I think is smart, it may still be very reductive to you, right? So it's doesn't really. I think there is a best abilities. There is sometimes I get a lot of ideas talking to my friends about it, riffing on. I don't think I think the idea is only one part of the work, right? So I think a lot of people are afraid to talk about the ideas or having a studio visit before the work is done. But by the time you think it's done and you want to show it, it may be too late to think about it, right? So I think it's how, thinking a lot of the time has to be this kind of generous act of openness about how bad your ideas can be, but also how, but I think there's something, right? You probably have a friend that is not really smart, and you have a friend that is very smart, right? And both things, and your friend that is not really smart say some smart things, and your friend that is super smart say dumb things. But the level of dumbness from the smart person is very different than the level of dumb things from the dumb person, right? So I think there is a limit for what we reach for those things, right? So I feel that you have to really be aware of your limitations and kind of push for the elasticity of this meaning that you can have. And so that's one thing. I think you should have to trust your instinct. If you consider yourself a smart, intellectually driven, or well-meaning person, that, some people are outsmart themselves, and then you are like, damn, that work is fucking racist. And because they were trying to point at some flawed society, and they don't realize that was coming across as insensitive, or racist, or sexist, or, and because they don't understand the limits of what they can offer, right? And so I think with that, you can, in some way, it doesn't mean that you can be really cozy on wherever you come from or intellectual background. But also, I think eventually it's an opinion, it's a process, it's a very personal project, right? And it will read as truthful. And I think it will be smart if it's truthful and truthful to you. and doesn't mean, how to say it, like you are the best person at being you, right? There is no one, what's your name?
Sorry, I'm Parker.
So there is no one better at being Parker than you, right? There is no one that knows more than you about yourself, right? It's like, so it's you coded with Parker and also with a little research. The work may not be perfect, but it's going to be so unique that people will like, well, there's an opinion, it's valid. You're right? It's like, then the works become that, kind of they scale into like being like, eventually with time and attention, you will be able to make them super beautiful or accessible or whatever, but you, I'm sure you're an interesting person, well, smart, because I assume because you're in a good school, right? So I think when you code those things with, your life experience, your particular, and again, not your background. It's not only like, well, I'm a brown person that, have an X orientation and I come from this X town, right? I think it's mostly about like actually what you have experienced. Actually what you have, the conversations you have had and the weird thoughts you have had. The real things to view, not the things that like just happen by chance, And I think when you code that works with that thing and a little research, it's like, usually works are pretty good.
Good time for one more question.
Who wants it?
What's
Somebody
way in the back? I see a beanie.
So when you're coming up with these installations, is it like, do you have a plan in your head the way you want it to look in your photographs, or is it like playing on an emotional playground when you're in process of creating these installations?
Well, you have dreams of stuff you would like to do, right? Like I'm sure you have dream of places you would like to go. And every month you look at your bank account and you say, I can go to these places, not all these other places, right? It's the same stuff. You have certain capacities for that time, right? Sometimes it's going to be amount of money and time and resources, but it's usually a mix of those things, right? So I have tons of ideas about stuff. Not like a million, but I have like 10 things I would like to make if I had the money. And then I have to start accommodating those things I want to do when I have half of that money. And then also when I have like a third of that time, And also, but it's little things, right? I have dreamed with ideas that I would like to make in these places. And then every single time I forget that like, fuck, in Europe they don't have 2x4s, But they have very long feet because the houses are taller. They are 16 feet. They are not 8 feet. So they have, I have to think also not only about my dreams. I have to live in the world, the world I live, right? So that is very, very specific, where you can really be stubborn about like how you want things to happen, right? If I got a solo show here and not in the galleries, the galleries too is complicated, right? There is a pillar in a corner that is not in the center, so I cannot make something that is super concentric. I gotta work with that architecture, right, or something like that, right? And here, I cannot screw stuff to the wall. So whatever I was thinking, I have to think about like as a tower, as an individual shape, right? But I have like these balconies. So maybe I don't even have to erect something. Maybe I can do something that lays flat, so I can look for a drawing, right? You have to actively think about what are the limitations to find. It's similar to what I was telling Parker about. It's like, I think being aware of your limitations, it will open a lot of opportunities. And I think, that kind of system where you really look at the thing and you say like, well, now I have to go flat, maybe I have more money, because if they give me $1,000 to make an installation, make a tower as tall as this, it will cost more money than that, but maybe making some drawing on the floor, I can pay $500 to like a group of students to make it super intricate, right? So you start investing resources where you think you're going to maximize the gestures, and not really where your dreams can be half as good. So that is the thing. Is that I have a lot of ideas, but I think you should always think about like with real world think in the forefront, like what you can do with certain amount of money and certain amount of time in the place that you can actually execute those dreams. So, yeah. Okay, one more. Just to make it awkward. Yeah.
I was wondering if your relationship to bureaucracy in your work changed over time as your immigration status changed, or was it only something in the beginning of your work?
Again, it doesn't change because I think like bureaucracy is like kind of like overarching power structure. For example, I became a citizen like 2 or 3 months ago, and again, and I did a little bit of paperwork, but wasn't as much. Actually, the reason why I became a citizen is because I was applying, my passport from Chile was expired, and I wanted to like get my passport renewed. And Chile was like, it will take like 12 to 16 weeks, and I was like, fuck these guys, I'm gonna become an American. And like, so that's the main reason. It's a spite citizenship, you know. And I just. And then eventually, so I got the passport on time, so my love came back, and then I got the citizenship anyway. But see, it's not about all the bureaucracy. It's like there was a ceremony, there was a lot of paperwork, you know. And you know, when I was in the, it's informed me not only the bureaucracy, but I was at the courthouse or whatever you get you do the interview, right? And I have to learn all these very intricate questions about American citizenship. And then you eventually become this, there were people there becoming citizens that was like a live gold, right? There were people with like family taking pictures. And I was like, I canceled a couple of meetings, and I tried to get early, and I was like doing it, I treated it like a paperwork, but other people were like, this is like top shelf moment in their lives. Right? And I have to examine myself about it because I feel like I haven't enjoyed a lot of things in my life, but also because I think about, I have this like, this is paperwork, it's annoying, my life is so much interesting than this, whatever, right? Whatever you think yourself in your high horse about it, I have to like really be careful because I watch people being like fucking emotional about it. And I was like, those questions were stupid. Like I was like, it just took me one podcast to figure out the whole test. And that's that. Like and it's like, so I'm like, fuck. Why do I don't have that? You know, why I don't have that, like feeling of belonging that is so magical and wonderful, right? So I think it's a way like every time I did paperwork in the last 18 years, like every photocopy stole a little bit of my soul, and now I have like I'm depleted or something like that. So like. But I mean, I'm thinking about making work about that too. It's like I was thinking, it's like why, you know, in the same way I asked people in the beginning what it takes to be an American artist, right? If you guys study art, consider yourself American artists, right? Mostly because if you want to make art in institutions that they've been historically, you know, chauvinistic, right, or like they've been run by straight white men. It's like, why do you want to belong so much to those organizations, right? It's complicated because you want your gestures, because your ego needs it, you know? Your ego needs to be your gestures in the intimacy of your room, be validated by society. And it's a weird feeling, it's a weird behavior, but I think it's like the same paperwork is like, you do paperwork and you hope every single time you solve that a little bit that you body gets reinforced and be like, yeah, you belong here. Yeah, you belong here. Yeah, you belong here. Every time you put paperwork is to prove that you exist, right? I mean, that is how they do it with voter registration and all kinds of ID, right? I remember when I was undocumented, I tried to go, I just got married, and then I was like, when I was younger, to get my green card, right? And I remember the women in the DMV was like, you need 5, it was totally a racist thing, wasn't like so like you need 5 pieces of ID. She just basically didn't want me to process I have like my drive, I have like 3 pieces of ID, which was the thing I needed to get I have my birth certificate, marriage certificate, and some like other stuff, right? And then I need 5 pieces of ID. And I was like, who has 5 pieces of ID? Right? But it's like so much obsession with belonging, right? It's like the amount of IDs, right? Which is fascinating as a case of paperwork, right? Because what I think a lot is like in French, the undocumented, right? The people, when you get stopped by the police here or by any institution in the airport, in any kind of authority, people ask you for picture ID, right? That is all what matters. Even if you're an immigrant, you know that the only thing that really matters is your social security number. The social security is what's going to allow you to get a job, and the only thing you want is a job, right? But for all authorities here, it's like a picture ID. So you need to have like 3 forms of ID is asking you basically for 3 places where your picture is at, where your face is at. But in French, people without those documentation is called sans papier, like without papers, right? And a lot of the time, the papers don't have pictures ID. And I think because the bureaucracy there is so much bigger, that like you just need to be a number, right? But here's a face, as a quality, it's a something that is so linked with how you look, that you belong in. It's like have to be documented, right? So I mean, the photo thing is very particular too, because you always identify with your face and your likeness is so linked to belonging that is very complicated to to change of any kind, for other religion groups to transition of sex. It's very complicated to belong into a country that wants you to be steady in a way of looking, right? So photocopies are very fascinating because of that, because it's like they run out of toner and they fade, and they're like not really. So, and also it's so cheap that a lot of times these institutions want you to belong, but you have to like for under 5 cents. And you have to do it just to prove that you have this stack of papers. And it's a very complicated. It's a long way to say like there is always in bureaucracy and my relation with institutions is mostly the question of belonging, more about like the obsession with paperwork, and what are the mechanisms that they want me to belong to somewhere, and how I can use that to make more art. Eventually it's all about me making more art, not about them. So that's.
Thank you, Rodrigo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.